Welcome to chapter 15 of Far from the Madding Crowd. A morning meeting, the letter again. In the previous chapter, we have seen Mr. Boldwood receiving the letter sent by Bathsheba. He kept brooding over the letter. He kept thinking who the author of the letter would be. And he decided to confirm it with Gabriel Oak. And at the end of the chapter, we were seeing Mr. Boldwood following Gabriel Oak. The whole of this chapter happens at the malt house, where we could see the other workers of Bathsheba. We have Matthew Moon, Joseph Poorgrass, all of them have gathered there for a drink. And at that time, the maltster is the one who brews the malt. The maltster kicked off a conversation. So this is the conversation, or this is the conversation starter. And how was she getting on without a Bailey? So who is the she here? It's Bathsheba Everdeen. And we know from the previous chapters that the bailiff Pennyways, he was caught in an act of theft, and he was fleed from Bathsheba's farm. So now Maltster is asking, how was she managing without a Bailey? So there came different answers, different responses from her workers. One said, a headstrong maid, that's what she is, and won't listen to no advice at all. So this is one person's opinion. They are calling her headstrong or proud and saying that she won't be listening to anyone's advice. Someone else commented that she can speak real language and must have some sense somewhere. So some of them were ready to accept that Bathsheba is capable of doing things, Bathsheba is sensible, while some others felt that she is headstrong, she is proud and vain. It was then Gabriel Oak enters with a few lamps. After he entered, everyone at the malt house discussed lambing, the other village news, and the topic of Bathsheba re-emerged. Mr. Oak sternly opposed others talking about Bathsheba in a teasing manner. Some people would be flirtishly talking about her, or some others would be teasing her. So Oak was not ready to accept all that. So let's see what he said. He showed his fist to the people who were mocking her, and he said, that's my fist. Now, the first man in the parish that I hear prophesying bad of our mistress, why, he'll smell and taste that, or I'm a Dutchman. So this is what he said. He threatened them of physically attacking them if they say anything bad about Bathsheba Everdeen. As this conversation was going on, Mr. Boldwood enters. So this chapter comes as a sequence to the previous chapter, where we saw Mr. Boldwood following Gabriel Oak. So now we know that Gabriel Oak was headed towards the malt house. And now at the malt house, Mr. Boldwood meets Gabriel Oak. Gabriel Oak receives the letter that Mr. Boldwood accidentally gets delivered from the mailman. And Mr. Boldwood apologizes for opening the letter without knowing that it was not addressed to him. So Gabriel Oak gets the new letter and he opens it and read it. Now let's see what's in that letter. Dear friend, I do not know your name, but I think these few lines will reach you, which I wrote to thank you for your kindness to me the night I left Weatherbury in a reckless way. So this is a letter from someone who wants to thank Gabriel Oak. I also return the money I owe you, which you will excuse my not keeping as a gift. All has ended well, and I am happy to say I am going to be married to the young man who has courted me for some time. Sergeant Troy of the 11th Dragoon Guards, now quartered in this town. I hope now you can relate or you can recollect who the author of the letter is. You can head over to chapter 7 and see the timid girl that the chapter discusses. There we saw we saw a meeting of Gabriel Oak and a girl, and that girl was Fanny Robin, who went missing from Bathsheba's household, or rather Bathsheba's house. So on that day, Fanny Robin was going to meet her lover, who had promised to marry her, and the lover's name was Sergeant Troy. We saw Gabriel Oak helping her with some money, and now along with this letter, Fanny Robin is returning the money that Gabriel Oak had offered her. Let's continue reading the letter. He would, I know, object to my having received anything except as a loan, being a man of great respectability and high honor, indeed a noble man by blood. So here, Fanny is talking about Sergeant Troy, calling him a man of great respectability, high honor, and a noble man. So she is saying that Sergeant Troy wouldn't be happy in accepting something as a gift or accepting money as a gift from an unknown man. So that is the reason why Fanny Robin is returning the money that she owes Gabriel Oak. I should be much obliged to you if you would keep the contents of this letter a secret for the present, dear friend. We mean to surprise Weatherbury by coming there soon as husband and wife, though I blush to state it to one nearly a stranger. So she is saying that they'll get married soon and they'll come back to Weatherbury to surprise everyone. The sergeant grew up in Weatherbury, so we are getting other details of the sergeant that he grew up in Weatherbury. So sergeant is a rank in the military and his name is Troy. Just like we call someone lieutenant or colonel, all that. Thanking you again for your kindness. I'm your sincere well-wisher, Fanny Robin. So this is the content of the letter. How Gabriel Oak shows the letter from Fanny Robin to Mr. Boldwood. As you may remember from the previous chapters that Mr. Boldwood was an unofficial guardian of Fanny Robin. We saw him in the previous chapters coming to Bathsheba's house, inquiring about Fanny's whereabouts, etc. Mr. Boldwood becomes depressed after reading the letter, and he also gives more details about Sergeant Troy to Gabriel Oak. So we have seen that Sergeant Troy grew up in Weatherbury, and thus Mr. Boldwood might be familiar with Sergeant Troy. The picture Mr. Boldwood gives Oak of Sergeant Troy is kind of different from what Fanny Robin had discussed in the letter. In the letter, Fanny Robin called Sergeant Troy an honorable man, someone with nobility, etc., while Mr. Boldwood tells that even though he is a clever fellow, even though Sergeant Troy is a clever fellow, he gets romantically attached to people easily. He also expresses his concern whether Fanny's marriage will really happen. Because at the end of that letter, towards the end of that letter by Fanny Robin, we have seen her talking about how both of them will come back to Weatherbury after their marriage and surprise everyone. But Mr. Boldwood is doubting whether that will happen or not. So here you can read what Mr. Boldwood is saying. I have much doubt if ever little Fanny will surprise us in the way she mentions, in the way that is surprise us with the marriage, with their marriage. Very much doubt, a silly girl, a silly girl. So Mr. Boldwood is saying that Fanny Robin is a silly girl. It could be that she is believing Troy without thinking much. It was at that time Caney Ball comes running to the malt house. So Caney Ball has come there to call Gabriel Oak for some errands at the farm, some work or some tasks related to lambing, or the lambs were there at the farm, and Gabriel Oak was required there. When Oak was about to leave, Mr. Boldwood revealed the anonymous letter to Gabriel Oak, because we know the reason, we know the motive of Mr. Boldwood's coming to Gabriel Oak. It was to find out, or it was at least to try and find out who the author of the anonymous letter is or could be. And now Mr. Boldwood asks him, I was going to ask you, Oak, he said with unreal carelessness, if you know whose writing this is. Oak glanced into the book and replied instantly with a flushed face, Miss Everden's. Now, Mr. Boldwood asks Oak whether he is able to understand or recognize the handwriting, and Oak could immediately recognize that it was Miss Everden's. Oak had colored simply at the consciousness of sounding her name, because we have seen Gabriel Oak having feelings to Bathsheba Everden, and here it is again being proven, because his feelings are not completely gone, because just right after saying her name, or simply by saying her name, he became flushed, he was blushing, all that things. He now felt a strangely distressing qualm from a new thought. The letter which was produced by Mr. Boldwood was a Valentine, which we know. So it created some sorts of doubts in the mind of Gabriel Oak, and with those doubts he left. Mr. Boldwood also returned to his house and started thinking about the circumstances, now with the new information of who the author is. In the previous chapter, we have seen him thinking about who the author could be, why would she have written the letter, etc. And now, from Gabriel Oak, he has received the details or more information that the author was Miss Everden, or Bathsheba Everden. And now he started thinking of, with the additional information of who the author is, he started thinking of why would she have written this letter, or what would be the circumstances that had motivated her to write this letter. To the end of the chapter. This chapter is completely set in the malt house, and in between for Fanny Robin section, you can head over to chapter 7 for some additional details if you have forgotten what is there or what was there in the chapter. At the end of the chapter, Mr. Boldwood finds out that the letter was written by Bathsheba Everden. Thank you.